Welcome to the How to Heart Show, helping men reconnect to the heart and empower others as the leaders they were born to be. I'm Vincent. The world needs the raw and authentic men right now. Join us if you're ready to make a change.
Hey, what's up, Lions, and welcome to the How to Heart Show. This is gonna be one of the most powerful conversations that I'm gonna have, and it's because of narcissism. And I dealt with some people that were narcissists, but in the beginning, I didn't know what it was about and what actually is a narcissist about, and how you can see them and discover them because they wear a mask, and sometimes it's really hard to see if they really are a narcissist or not. And some they are really, how can I say, hidden narcissists. And I have a good buddy of mine, he's been dealing a lot with this. So I decided I want to bring this topic more up so we can have this discussion. And I brought really somebody special. She already talked to me about her life a little bit and how she went through an abuse with a narcissist and how she got out of it. And I really want to have her on the show because she has so much knowledge and she has so much insight about a narcissist. So I'm super, super excited to have Anita Smith here and talk more in depth about narcissists. So Anita, thank you so much for being on the show, and thank you so much for taking the time and explain more about the narcissist.
Thank you so much for having me. This has become my life passion, is to really look at, how this has infiltrated into our world, because this is worldwide. This is something that isn't just about men. It's not just about women. It's about all of us, because even if you haven't been in a narcissistic relationship, you are still experiencing it through someone else because they're projecting. I've worked with men for the last 35 years. And so men have a special place in my heart, as far as being able to freely express yourself. Our society today has taught men for decades, for centuries, really, to suppress their emotions. And after doing a lot of research, Vincent, I've really found that might be one of the main catalysts that creates a narcissist, is not to be in touch with your feelings and suppress things, and not being able to fully express the way you feel without being shamed or criticized or judged. Because men have had this stereotype where they're taught to, show up in this way where they're supposed to not cry, not feel, and not show their emotions, or they would have ridicule. And I watched this growing up, and I, grew up in a farming community. So, it was kind of like, you had to man up, if you got hurt, you didn't express it. I watched this through my husband not too long ago, about 3 years ago. He shattered his leg and he was so afraid to cry. And he had 87 pieces, the doctor said, that were shattered in his leg that they put back together. And it really put me down this road of, why aren't we expressing our emotions? What is wrong with that, right? And actually, there's nothing wrong with that. We're entitled, and we can give ourselves permission to fully feel everything and be able to own those feelings, because the one thing that a narcissist does the most is they detour your feelings, and they treat it like it's not important. Like you can express, well, I really want this, or I don't want that. Don't do that, right? And they'll blow it off, and they'll dismiss your feelings as if they don't matter. Because I truly believe that somewhere deep inside of their own trauma, they feel that their own emotions have been, denied. And there's this built up resentment. And so it becomes this game. And I know, medically speaking, narcissists have been known scientifically to, there's a part of their cerebral brain that does not allow them, because it's been suppressed so long, it wasn't fully developed, that they can't actually show compassion or feelings, feel what someone else is feeling. Like if they hurt them, it's more like an observatory where they're looking over and they're like, this is interesting. I wonder if I do this, what response I get, or if I do that, what response I'll get. So it's a fascinating concept to look at how our emotions are so important for development and so important for strengthening us and being able to be healthy and whole.
Thank you, Anita, so much for sharing. And when you mention all these things, a lot of questions came up. But before we go into there, I want to ask you in a nutshell who you are and what you do, because you told me the story about yourself and what you've been through, and it was really intense. I was really shocked with what you told me. So can you explain to the listeners who you are and what you do and what it was living with a narcissist?
Absolutely. Well, my name is Anita Smith. I'm the CEO and founder of Men for More. And I named my company Men for More because of the feeling that I got from being in a narcissistic relationship. I knew deep down inside of me that I was meant for more than what I was being handed. And I used those things that happened to me so it would propel my life forward and eventually become for me. And it really, in a lot of ways, was like training. As I look back, if you don't go through, like if you're in a gym and if you don't lift the weights, put pressure on the muscle doesn't grow. And life is a lot like that. If we're willing to take on the battle or take on the tests, learn the lessons, be able to go through the difficult things, the things that we don't understand at the time, because I know that God creates, as in his word, he says, he takes evil for good. And really that's what I see happening since I have gone through some of the most twisted and bizarre in some ways things that I've gone through. I grew up in a narcissistic home. I was the youngest of 8 kids. When I look now, after doing, so much research and, over the last 20 years, most of my family are narcissists. So it's very confusing for me stepping into this world without support, without guidance, without somebody actually caring for me. And the manifestations of that became where I, really didn't have a very good image of myself. I would look in the mirror and I'd be like, I was so picky. I was microscoping myself, which was a duplicate of what a narcissist did to me. So we take on these attributes or these behaviors that we're taught, and then we self-sabotage ourselves in the process. So I didn't have confidence, so I did things that harmed myself. I didn't think I was pretty enough. I didn't think I was skinny enough. I didn't think that I was smart enough, because of the way I was treated. And that's the key, is, attaching your identity to the way that you're treated couldn't be farther from the truth, because who you are is who God created you to be. And that's think about it. He took the time to create you. I seen this really cool graphic of Jesus as the potter, right? Forming the clay. And it was this little infant that he had formed with his hands into clay. And scripture says he is the potter, we are the clay, and he's forming and shaping us, right? And I just thought that was so beautiful. But if God's going to take the time to create me, that means that I have a special purpose. And being able to identify with that as I grew older and as I started to gain strength and understanding, but at the time I was in it, I had no knowledge of that. I had no feeling like I was special. I didn't feel like I was on this earth for anything. It was like, why am I here? Kept asking these questions, and but yet pressing forward, right? Because we're built for survival. We are built also for curiosity, and that curiosity causes us to grow. So as I went through life, things were very confusing. I went to college. I could never understand why I was frequently a loner. I was frequently alone, didn't really trust people. I didn't know where that came from. I didn't understand it, and felt like I had difficulty socially engaging with other people and making it stick. And it all boils down to trust, right? So because of the way I was raised and the environment, the highly toxic environment that I was in, I just didn't trust anybody. If your siblings aren't like, hey, and saying, hey, Anita, come over here. I want to show you something. Let me help you. You better watch out for that. Or be protective if someone is attacking or confronting you. And that was missing in my life. So I learned not to trust at a very young age. And actually, I can remember many times when my parents left and my brothers and sisters were using me for science experiments. So I would run and I would, find a place to hide until they forgot about what they were doing, right? And then later in life, I ended up meeting someone, and I was dabbling with things that would build my confidence and doing things here and there that made me feel like I had value. I was an artist. Most importantly, though, I was a very sensitive person. Always have been. And I used to think that that was a curse. I used to think that that was, the thing that was causing me to fail in life, is because I was always told, oh, you're too emotional. You're overreacting, get over it. And but now I see it as my super strength, because it's the one thing that I know that actually allows me to help other people. It's the thing that this world needs most, is kindness and people that have compassion and understanding, right? So I remember when I was I had met my first husband, and I was at that point in my life, I was at the point of quitting college, quitting 3 part-time jobs. I was pretty much at the end of my rope. So he caught me at a very low point in my life. And the manipulation started right at the very beginning. He was, in this promoter mode, and he was also very controlling. But he was in this promoter mode, and the things that he would speak to me were, now that I look back, were really fantasy comments. He wasn't what he said he was, but he would act like it was. He was that person. He would act like he was doing things that he wasn't doing, and he was puffing himself up and really playing center stage. Well, we ended up moving out to the East Coast, and we started to go to this church, and they were telling us, well, you shouldn't live together. You should get married because that's fornication. And I'll never forget walking up to the altar, and I could hear this quiet voice in my ear saying, this is wrong. This is wrong. But because I wasn't in my boldness, I didn't know who I was, because I feared what the ramifications were. I was way out, over 2,000, probably 3,000 miles away from home, and I was alone. And it's like, if I say no, then what? Then what would happen? What was going through my mind? So I went through it. And then we, at first it wasn't so bad. We were together, but he'd always make like little snide comments, because I came from a farm. He'd go, oh, you guys are just a bunch of hillbillies. And I'm like, never heard that before, And I even remember him saying, don't tell your parents that we're getting married until after we get married. Because I think he knew that my parents would would talk to me and maybe ask me some questions that would say, maybe this isn't such a good idea until you've been together a certain amount of time, blah, blah, blah. So we went through that whole process, got married, stuck with it. The abuse was mostly emotional, psychological, mental abuse. And as things ramped up and they got to this point where it became out of control. I knew that he was having an affair. He was getting home at 4 or 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, and just rubbing it under my nose, telling me things about, oh yeah, well, she bought me a birthday gift, and he was telling me all about his affair, basically, without saying it. But he was always like taunting. And I remember one day I was standing at the sink, I was washing dishes, and he walked in with this. I had sculpted a horse out of pottery, and it was curing, and it was on the shelf. And when he walked in the door, he like snuck it underneath his coat, and then let go of it as soon as he got into the kitchen, acting like it weighed like 15 pounds. So acting like it caught on his coat, and was just waiting, was just looking for ways that he could poke at me to get me to react or respond or act out or do something so that he could point a finger and he could set me up. And a lot of what narcissists do is they do that. They poke at you. They find out where your weaknesses are. They find out what matters most to you, so that if they can get under your skin enough, they can make you look like you're an angry person, you're a crazy person for reacting, and how could you do that? And I didn't deserve that from you type of attitude that they sling back at you. So there are so many different aspects to how a narcissist approaches you, but the commonality in a narcissist is to find your weak spots by poking and by testing, checking your boundaries, checking what matters to you. And then they test you. They will speak to you in a way where they'll tell you to do something and then tell you you did that. They never said that you made that up. That's all in your head. Or they'll ask you to do something, and if it goes wrong, then they'll put you on a platform to shame and blame you or judge you because you didn't do it right. The other things that they do is they're looking for a way to grandstand as being right all the time, instead of telling things in the way that they actually are to other people. They make up stories. They're in fantasy. It's just this world that they live in that is such an alter reality that they create for themselves because it's conditional. If they're in a mood one day, they'll walk up to you and they'll say, well, I'd be in a better mood if you weren't here, or, and really making you feel small, making you feel like you did something wrong. Most of the time it was, if you were breathing, there was a problem. So yeah, from my experiences and the things that I've learned from talking with some of the clients that I have, a lot of the things that I'm saying now might not be exact, but there is a blueprint that seems to be standardized between all narcissists. And this is, like we were speaking earlier, Vincent, this is what I believe to be really spiritual. Because how can it be that this is in the Middle East, it's in, it's over in China, or if it's in Greenland, or it's in Iceland, or wherever it might be, in the United States, over in the Netherlands, over in Spain. How can it be that narcissistic behavior has such an incredible identity that is identical How can that be? When we were speaking earlier, we were talking about, some of our experiences that, we had. And I know that with the men that I've worked with that are sensitive, they are commonly with a woman that is very domineering. And with the balances of, the sensitivity, it's not always like that. It's not like stereotype, but it's very common that a man who's with a woman who's more empowered and more outspoken, more in her masculine, that the man will be more in his feminine. And we all have masculine and feminine traits, right? We all share those same things. But for men to truly be men, they are the leaders, the providers, the protectors, and have this strength about them where, they know who they are. They are walking in a direction that is, the path that they're forging. It's, things that they're creating. They walk in their strength. But that doesn't mean they can't be sensitive. That doesn't mean that can't be compassionate. It doesn't mean that they are not a man if they cry, right? But when a woman will belittle a man and make him feel small for expressing certain emotions or not standing up to her, then she's leaning in and she's manipulating and she's using maybe even sex as a tool. I've seen that where they will manipulate a man through sex, and especially in their youth, because the hormones are high and everything changes, right? In that dynamic of maturity, in that dynamic of finding out who you are. So getting to this plateau of understanding how narcissists work, how they will infiltrate into someone's life by looking at them as prey that is easy to control, right? So learning about how narcissists operate, understanding their blueprint, being able to identify, and even if you're not in a narcissistic relationship, knowing this knowledge can actually be of so much help to someone else, because you can say, hey, I noticed this, or hey, I noticed that. Just watch yourself. Or if you need someone to talk to, I'll be here. But commonly, a narcissist will set you up to make you look like you're the one that's to blame, which puts you in isolation, which makes it harder to get the support that you need in the moment. And that's why this is so important, to really bring awareness and understanding, to the layers of what narcissistic abuse really looks like.
Yeah, I totally agree. When I just discovered and learned about the narcissist, I was really shocked because I didn't know about it. And I also talked a lot with my friend about it, and he shared a lot of things about how narcissists operate. And I was just, how can people be like this? They have no empathy. They wear a mask. They use people against you. They use children as weapons, and they just don't care. And I say to myself, how can you live like this? Like, how can you live like this? It's so crazy. And I've seen people just go through life just planning, building warfare against you just to get what they want. Or is it really that they've been traumatized so much in their childhood that they now say, I don't want to do this anymore. Now I'm gonna be the abused. Now I'm gonna be in power. Now I'm gonna be in control, and nobody's gonna hurt me. Now I can hurt people how people hurt me. Is it something like that, or is it something that they miss when they got born? How is really a narcissist being born, if I can say it like that?
Yeah. Well, most all narcissists go through their own trauma, they have their own childhood trauma. They are insecure from that trauma. And because they're not dealing with their emotions, they, build up this level of resentment, and then it makes it really hard to be able to get into this level of compassion that most of us have the ability to express to one another, right? To be able to be a support to one another. But yes, they are, and it's a really fascinating, I'm so glad you brought this up, because a really fascinating thing that I have found through my research, okay, this is might gonna blow your mind a little bit,
Okay.
is that is that so a narcissist is insecure, right? And what's the number one thing that they project onto their victim is to cause them to become insecure. And so they use these methods to bring them down, right? So maybe they're even at the same level for quite a while, and they're sharing this level of insecurity. But once you're not, because most of their targets are strong, intelligent, capable, talented, beautiful people, right? They're just dynamic. And it's like they're leeching, and they're like, oh, I'm with her, or I'm with him, because, this puts me in a position where I am, it gives me status. It makes me feel strong too, right? But when they wore you down, because they're relentless, when they've wore you down, when they've poked and poked and poked at you, when they've, spoken slander over you and betrayed you so many times over and over and over again, you think about it, it takes 21 days to change a habit. If you're practicing it, especially 3 times a day, it takes 21 days. So imagine speaking something over somebody repeatedly every day, every day, every day, and how that transforms you as a person. And neurologically, it actually rewires you differently, so that your belief systems are different, your projection out into the world is different, your perception of what's actually going on becomes this warped reality. Like Vincent, I could walk up to you and go, hey, you know what, Vincent, I'm only saying this for your good, thinking that I'm for you. And I'm saying something like that, and you're perceiving it as you're protecting me. But I'm projecting this on you because I want to keep you small. Because I want to keep you hidden. I want to keep you from shining more than I do, so that I can feel better. And so if I can trap you into this emotional, web of making you believe that I'm really for you, but I'm manipulating you to keep you small so I can more easily control you, then it becomes a whole different dynamic. And that is really what happens. It's really this very subtle, very deceptive, it's cunning, it's premeditated. It is these actions and these intentions that somebody has. I was reading an article not too long ago, and it said you're being hunted. And at first I sat there and I was like, I can see that. I can really identify with that, because I have seen, in a spiritual sense, being in a crowd, and it's like somebody treats you poorly, and then all of a sudden someone else will come in, as if your abuser that's treating you poorly has given permission for other people to treat you poorly too. And then they enroll into this dynamic of, it's like, oh, we're just going to keep her small, and I'll help you do it because I like you. And it seems like she's really screwed up anyway, so I'm going to go with you because you seem like the stronger person that, is just keeping her in check. Right. And that is another example that I can give you of what I've actually seen, and what I've actually seen in other people, what's happened to them in their experiences. And it's like I said, the blueprint is so identical. Like even with kids, you were mentioning how kids are weaponized, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in my case, I had been married for 9.5 years, and I remember going for a walk with the kids. I think they were, between like 5, 6, 3, somewhere in that ballpark. And we were supposed to be going for a family walk. And I remember my ex-husband like slinging comments at me and then getting the kids enrolled in laughing at their mother. And it wasn't enjoyable. So I turned around, I went back to the house, and they kept on their walk. And it's like, oh, your mother is always like blah, blah, blah. She's always this way or that way. She's over dramatic. She's delusional. I heard this over and over and over, to the point where my kids were starting to say the same things that he was. And then when it came to the time that I just, had cried for 3.5 years because I was so miserable. I was real focused on the vows that I had set at the altar, and I meant them, and was trapped in them. I don't believe that God wants any of us to be abused. I don't believe that God wants us to be suffering. And so I prayed, and I prayed, and I prayed. I dove in really hard and got on my knees many times. And I said, Lord, but this one night, it was 2:00 in the morning, and I remember folding my baby's clothes. And I would honestly stay up late on purpose most of the time and sacrifice my sleep because it was the only time I had peace. And I sat there and I told the Lord, I said, I can't do this anymore. I'm checked out. It's either you do something or I'm going to end it. And I was that close to suicide. I mean, I couldn't take it anymore. I had hit my brick wall. I was done. And at that moment, I heard God speak to me, and he said, you're already forgiven. And it gave me the hope, and it gave me the energy to still be there for my kids and to push through and to be able to go to an attorney and file for separation. And while that was in process, right? Because I was like, well, I'm not going to file for divorce because, God hates divorce. And so I thought, well, I'm just going to get us separated legally so I can get away from him. And before I knew it, he had divorce papers handed to me like 3 days later. And I didn't even have the separation. It wasn't finalized. I mean, they were slow on getting it going. He had this expedited, had it handed to me, and then we were separated shortly after that. So that was a huge blessing. But, later down the road, he was, he had stalked me for 6.5 years. He was so obsessed with controlling me. He canvassed the entire neighborhood. He was spreading lies about me, had people watching me. I was always under surveillance. I was always under the microscope. And then it came to the point where he was fighting for custody. We had, split custody. And then he ended up taking, against a court order, and he took the kids out of state. And he took them out of state for 4.5 years, and that I never had contact with my kids. So in essence, he kidnapped my children. But the legal system, it's all about the money. So they wouldn't do anything to help protect the relationship that I had with the kids and stand with me on this. So it was very interesting how things all played out. And, the kids were weaponized. I didn't realize till much later, that I had PTSD from my childhood. I had PTSD big time from my marriage. I could hear his voice in my head for 1.5 years after we got divorced, because every time I went to do something, it's like, you can't do that. You're never going to succeed. Who do you think you are? All these negative things. It's like I didn't have to think it. He told it to me. And so working through that and really finding my boldness, finding myself in the process. There was actually a point that I think it was a couple years later, where I was becoming extremely bold, but it was tied with a lot of resentment. It was tied with a lot of anger. It was tied with, like, you can't touch me. No one's ever going to control me again. And I was pushing back, and I was wanting to get in, I was interested at that point as possibly dating, but it's like I was deflecting men right and left because they were, couldn't understand where I was coming from. And as I look back now, it's like, I wouldn't want to have been with me either, because I seemed like I was angry. I really wasn't, but I definitely had my walls up. And so it created an interesting dynamic, how we can self-sabotage ourselves without realizing the very thing that we want the most is the very thing that we're pushing away and sabotaging ourselves from. So that's part of the thing that I help people with, is being able to walk out of these very complex and confusing warp reality relationships and be able to find and ground themselves in who they are, and then start building, using this principle of building, actually have a building company. And so, this process of digging in, sometimes when we dig in, we don't understand that, hey, there's things that we don't know are under that ground that are going to be surprises that come up. So, the unexpected happens. And then there's a lot of prepping, there's a lot of planning, there's a lot of strategic processing and how this is all going to work out, that you prep yourself for, right? Before you ever build that foundation. But once you have a solid foundation of who you are, of what you want, of what the vision is that you have for your life, and where you want to go with this, what is it going to look like when you're done building? What is it going to look like on the outside and on the inside? And so that's pretty much the framework that I work with people on, in helping them understand, what a narcissist is, what role they play in this dynamic relationship. And now that they have come out of this, like a lot of people say, I thought I dealt with that. In fact, I know I dealt with that, but why does this still keep coming up? Why is this still here? Well, if you think about it, so every experience is like a layer that we layer on top and we layer on top. And then after a while, we're like pushing it down and pushing it down, trying to ignore it, but it still keeps coming up when we get triggered, when we are reminded of certain things, when we hear a certain thing or someone has a certain attitude, and we step back, because we're always looking for a safe place. And that process of weaving through all these emotions and being able to pull them out and really actually feeling them, not to relive them, but to recognize that it's okay to own those feelings. It's okay if you were angry. It's okay if you even had resentment up, to a point. It's a matter of letting it go and really freeing yourself, so you're not hanging on with all this weight. If I was to speak negative over you over and over again, Vincent, it would feel heavy, right?
You're gonna believe it.
Yeah. And then there's the word, and then you start to believe it, right? Because it's being spoken over you. Then you start to believe it, you absorb it, and you're absorbing, the guilt, the shame, the judgment, the failure that you feel inside, this feeling like I should be farther along in life. How could I let this happen to me? But you don't know what you don't know. And if you don't know, it's like fighting a war with an invisible enemy. And not only just fighting a war, but fighting it inside of a cage, because you've isolated yourself and you've been protecting yourself, and you're fighting this war, and you're just like, I don't know what it is, but I don't want it near me. And you fight, but you hang on to these feelings like you're not all together. There's nothing to fix in you. There's just things to modify and transform. It's just a matter of shifting from what you believed into the new possibilities that you have that are waiting for you. They're just waiting for you to answer the call. It's kind of like that scripture that says, I stand at the door and I knock, and waiting for that door to be open, right? Waiting for you to see exactly. And that's the beauty of awareness, right? Once you unlock the door to awareness and actually can see what's going on, what's been happening, how it manifested, how they subtly said certain things that landed in your sensitivity, that you anchored yourself with and you took on ownership and identity with. There was a reason why when I was growing up, I would look in the mirror and I would just like ugh. I'd be like, I didn't like what I seen because I didn't like the way I felt about myself. Interesting, isn't it?
Very interesting, and thank you so much for sharing, Anita. But the question that came really strongly within me was, why didn't you leave sooner? I know you had some red flags and you said to yourself, I don't feel right here and I really want to go, but you stayed. And why did you leave and why did you stay?
I'm glad you asked that question. And not only have I researched into this, but I've really looked deep inside myself. And I think the biggest thing that I battled was I didn't want to feel like a failure. I didn't want to feel like I let God down. But the biggest part is, what would people say? How would I explain what's going on? Because he's already made me look like I'm a crazy person, right? He's already made me look like I'm the bad guy. It's my fault that this all fell apart. And so it's ego. A lot of it is ego that we hang on to instead of just doing what needs to be done and stepping into your power. Because every time we allow someone not to let us speak, every time they dim our light, every time they try to make us be small and live smaller instead of aspiring to this greatness that is, just busting to get out inside of all of us, we are trapped in this thing called ego, of the way we're perceived, the way we show up, the way, it's like, who cares? What other people's opinions are none of my business. This is my life. And I only have a certain time on this earth that I get to create joy, freedom, and abundance. And that is my focus. And it's not selfish to do things that best serve you. That was another thing, another lie, another false belief. Every time I wanted to do something for myself, I feel guilty because I was conditioned that was not deserving of that. I was conditioned that, I had to ask permission. I was conditioned that was for someone else and not for me. And the revelation that I came to was like, oh my gosh, he infiltrated a backup plan, really, in making me think that I didn't deserve to be happy. I didn't deserve to have something better. And so it affected, but it also drove me down into this really deep depression. And the other thing that I found, that is so powerful is, where's our energy, right? When you're in a super depressed state, it's like you're really in a place of self-harm. You're in a place of self-sabotage. You don't believe anything's for you. It's hard to get up in the morning. I remember it was so hard. That was the hardest part of my day, was getting up in the morning and living another day of that. Looking myself in the mirror and just like, it's like, it took so much strength. It took so much energy because I was just in a very that was something, that I did, or that I was asking for this, it's really interesting how we think when we're in a narcissistic relationship. We beat ourselves up just as much as they do. We duplicate, and it's a double down on what we're believing, how we're treating ourselves, what we're feeling, how we perceive things, what we believe is possible, and how we look, how we see ourselves. So the time that we were separated, those couple of years when I started gaining my strength, I started realizing, hey, I am talented. I can do this. I'm actually intelligent. I've been told I've been stupid for so long that I really believed I wasn't that smart. In school, when I was a kid, I actually had a reading. What did they call that? It was like a deficit, where I had difficulty reading. But when I got out of my home that I grew up in, and I started getting into books, and then I was reading, I'm like, I don't have an issue with reading. Why was it so hard in high school? Why was that difficult? But it was my environment. So your environment really regulates so much, and is why it's so important to be able to identify, okay, is this for me or is this for them? Is this for me where I can use this, for all of the areas in my life that I want to pursue, So your energy level, as I was talking about, is so important to be able to really guard and protect, protect your heart, protect your mind. How are you thinking? Because we can drive ourselves right down a rabbit hole of negative thoughts. Many times my clients and I get into a conversation, and they get agitated with me when they say, oh my gosh, I'm so afraid of this. I'm afraid of this. I'm afraid of that. And I said, well, what if you told yourself a different story? What if you told yourself that you're not afraid? Well, I'm not going to speak in a warped reality. I said, is it? Or is it just a question that you can ask yourself? Is, why am I afraid in the first place? And what could I speak differently that would inspire me to be able to be charged, to create a new level of energy, to motivate myself, to be able to lift myself up out of my pit, be my own cheerleader and my own coach, and be able to say, I've got this. I can do this. And, yes, I always reach to the higher power first, but God gave us certain skills to be able to renew our minds every morning, choose what we want to think, also choose what is best serving us, and choose the life that we want, and do that in a building process. Because we don't eat an apple in one bite, right? Just like we don't eat an apple. What was the other phrase I heard? We don't eat an elephant whole, right? So it's just taking one little bite at a time, and being able to accept that, it's like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, all this impatience inside of me. I want it now. I want it now. I want it now. I've wasted so much time. I don't have any more time to waste. But a building process is a process, and you want to build it structurally sound. You want to make sure you're on a solid foundation. You want to make sure you have the framework that you want to work in. And then you do the finishing touches. You wrap it, you seal it, you cover it, and then you work on the inside.
Well, Anita, thank you so much for sharing this powerful story, and also how to get out what you can do. But actually, I got a question here that I want to share with you. And the question is, how did you cope with the fact that people suddenly turn their backs towards you? People who previously come along with you or come along well, but after you left the narc, they looked at you like you don't even exist. So in the beginning, they're really nice and kind, and then once you left, they turn their back on you and they attack you. So why is that?
So how did I step out of that? How did I deal with that? That was the question.
No, it's how to cope when the fact that they turn their back on you. So in the beginning they start to talk to you, but then they turn their back on you, and then you don't even exist. So they shut you down completely.
Right. You know, as I look back at my life, the thing that I recognize is that there are times where being alone is a superpower. Being alone gives you an opportunity to get away from all the distractions, to be able to really look at yourself, because most of us stay so busy. One of
Here's
my clients,
the
how do you cope with the fact that people suddenly turn their backs towards you? Yeah. Well, as I was saying, you know, taking a good hard look at yourself isn't a bad thing. And trying to validate their acceptance. Were they really healthy for you in the first place? Were they the ones that were there helping you, strengthening you, advising you, supporting you? And if none of those are yeses, then sometimes being alone is more effective. It's more powerful because now you're in your own head. That can be good and bad, yes, because if we haven't changed our negative thinking, that can be bad. But when you're in the process of making change and creating something new, and you're creating this shift in your life because you've hit a wall, the pain has driven you to shifting, right? There's going to be some unknowns over here that you just don't know. You maybe didn't expect somebody. You know, I had a really good friend of mine that said that he was like, you know, like he would call himself my brother. You know, we went to business college together after I got divorced. And he was a good buddy. He was like a brother. And then he had turned on me too. And there was a point where I turned to him and I said, you know, he agreed to help me while I was out as girlfriend. And they said that they were going to, you know, watch over my place and all this other stuff. And turns out that they were trying to steal. And he came back several years later, and I turned to him and I said, you know, with friends like you, who needs enemies? So really, this is a strengthening process that I found. Um, you know, it's just really realizing who is for you, who really is for you, is going to be there. They're going to be there through thick and thin, and they're going to love you through this. And they're going to let you feel what you feel, and hopefully redirect you, if they have the right information, into a healthier form of you, so that you are not staying in this place where you're accepting being walked all over and disregarded and not considered. Those are not healthy people. So if they're turning your backs on you because somebody lied to them, then let them. You know, Mel Robbins she had that book that she wrote, and she's made many speeches on this. You know, if they're not for you, they're what? They're against you, in essence, because it's either, there is no gray area in between. It's either up or down, right? It's either right or left. It's either in or out, on or off, for you or not for you, right? So that is what I really look at. You know, what is the depth of the person? And then it really helps you to be able to identify the quality of people that you really want to attract into your life. Because as you change your environment. You change the people around you. They're either going to stick with you or you're going to find new friends. And it's the one thing that I also really hang on to is, don't take it personal. That's their choice. And you can't control people. If they don't want to be your friend, if they don't want to stick with you, if they want to live in deception, then let them. It's the easier way to live your life. And that's the other part of, what are you hanging on to? Are you like, oh my gosh, they don't like me, and oh my gosh, why should you have to change who you are and the qualities and the beauties about yourself to adapt to someone else. That's what you've been conditioned to do the whole time that you've been in a narcissistic relationship, is to sacrifice yourself and adapt to their moods, adapt to their anger, adapt to their confrontations, and sneak around and try to find the safe place in life. You know, I believe that we were meant to be bold. I believe that we were meant to be fearless and be able to stand for who we are. And there is such a freedom and a power in really embracing who you are as a person and being this powerhouse that is okay in your own skin, and being able to say, you know what? I'm good alone. I'm good in a crowd. I'm just good. I'm not going to worry about it, and I'm not going to attach myself either way.
Usually it's easy said than done, and it takes a lot of courage and a lot of time and processing. But how do you do it in co-parenting? So you're not living on by yourself. You still need to deal with this person. So you're still have a contract or agreement, or there's a child that you need to switch from side to side. You give it to her, she gives it to you. So how do you deal with that? You can, when you're living alone and you have no child, it's easier. But when you are together and you have to deal with somebody that you see on a regular basis, how do you cope with that? How do you deal with that when they start to be extreme, or they don't talk to you anymore, or they ignore you, or they don't want to, or they want to put up a fight with you? What are the advices that you can give to people that are having problems in a co-parenting with a narc?
Well, it's not easy, and I'm not going to pretend that it's easy. The thing that I know that is the most important thing that I focused on is my children. You know, their mental health, their well-being. Are they happy? You know, children should be growing up in a happy home, in a happy environment, and their environment that you can provide when they're with you. And how you show up. You know, are you going to focus on your ex? Are you going to focus on your partner who has caused you a lot of pain? Talk about them all the time in front of your children? Or are you going to plan fun things to do? Are you going to spend special time with them, reading books, or, you know, doing certain things that you do at home or out? You know, make their time with you special, memorable, connected, you know, meaningful. And everything that you can do to be, you know, showing up as the strong person that you are. Bring that person out. You know, let them see your power. Let them see that you can let go and not be resentful. It will help them immensely as they're growing older, not to hold resentment as well. And it will also show, you know, what it's like to stand for yourself and be able to stand in your power. You're okay with who you are. I guarantee you, practicing that part is going to be a lifelong journey. It doesn't happen in a day. Personal development is really, in essence, practice. And we practice this every day. You know, we practice them, you know, and we choose. We choose how we show up. We choose our, you know, are we going to choose to show up angry? Are we going to choose to show up happy? Are we going to choose to let our energy be low and like, okay, come on, kids? Or are we going to go, kids, I have something so fun planned. We're going to have such a great day. This is going to be a great weekend or a great week. And, you know, attend and support them, you know, in their events and the things that they're doing. You know, even if you know that your ex is going to create, you know, say some stuff, just show up anyway. Focus on your kids. Focus on what you get to create with your kids, because it makes a world of difference for them. And it also makes a difference for you as a parent to know that you are giving the best of your best to them so that they can be at their best. Because a lot of times what happens is we project onto our children all that anger, you know, the resentment, you know, the the labeling, all that stuff. And they don't want to be a part of that. They'd rather have their parents back together, even if it's in a toxic home, because then they get them both at the same time. It's very difficult for children to be split. And it affects, futuristically, it affects, the traditions that you created, the things that are special. Because if you're not creating that when they're young, they're not going to do that when they're older on their own, because they're probably going to hold a little resentment that they didn't have that, and they've seen other families having that. So, yeah, we only get one chance to be parents, so we get to be the best parents that we can be during that process.
Yeah, and when I talk to my friend, I know he struggles with it a lot, and I can see how it affects him, but he's trying his best. He's making the time with his family like the best. He does the best what he can do, and that's what I'm always so proud of him for doing that. He can also say what you said, like, oh yeah, you want to do something, and he always puts up his energy. He always told me, I'm gonna put her at number one. I'm gonna give her the best time of her life. But it's also for yourself, not just for your children, but also for yourself, to lift yourself up, to feel good, to feel powerful. And when I was talking to you on this interview, I heard you always go to the powerful mindset. Don't go into the victim mindset. And I think that's what the narcissists hate, for you to stay low and selfish, and you be angry. If you switch that, I've seen it with narcissists that I had to deal with as well. I ignored him. I stopped talking to him. I just did my own thing, and I saw he was losing his power. He didn't
Yes.
respond. He didn't react. And I stand in my power. For when your relationship with somebody else is different, but for me, I don't have like a mutual relationship with him. But I saw it was weakening, and it was really hard for him to really take his power, and I felt more and more powerful. But he gave me another question. How do you deal with the fact knowing that narc and their family are lying to you, child, and threatening? I will show you fast. It's going to be too difficult for me to.
Yeah. Well, one of the main things that narcissists do is they will publicly humiliate, and they will grandstand themselves. They will, work, and they use the people that you're connected with to try to shame you, judge you, perceive you as somebody that you're not. The key is to show consistently, powerfully, as you, unapologetically. You don't have to apologize for being who you are, and they're going to use whoever they can, because that's what they do. That's how they maneuver and how they control and condition. And if you're non-responsive, if you're just like, that's funny. It's like, oh, is that what you heard? Interesting. And be non-attached emotionally. Emotional regulation is your superpower, aside of owning your identity, and be able to just decide, am I going to entertain this, or am I just going to think this is really amusing in the moment? And look at it from a whole different perspective, because you've been so conditioned to absorb everything that they're saying and everything they're doing and hold your ground. Let go of your ego. It doesn't matter. It's like they're going to say what they say. They're going to do what they do. You cannot control other people, but you can regulate your emotions. You can stand in who you are. And that is your biggest power, is really just embracing, I'm a good person. I don't hurt other people. I don't go out to hurt other people, and maybe even make a comment, go, it's really interesting that you're saying that, because I have no idea why you're saying that, and put a little challenge out there. It's like, where did you hear that? And get them questioning what they're actually saying, because if they're just, one thing I just had a memory jogger here. The one thing that I always questioned was, why didn't anybody ever ask me what was going on? Why didn't anybody ask questions? Is this true? Is this not true? And that's a great question to ask them, because it's like, if you're saying this, I'd like to know why you're saying this and where it came from. And I'd love for you to ask my perception on what is really true here, because there are times that maybe you can get them to shift enough to start questioning the actions, right? If you're consistent, showing up positive, you're focused on your kids, you're focused on your life, you're focused on doing good things, they're going to see. And for me, it took quite a few years. My ex actually went and had a private meeting with my brothers and sisters to tell them that I was going crazy. And when I hit a wall, he'd be there to take my kids. Well, that didn't work. So he took my kids out of state against a court order. So he was really, he was really trying to put me in a psych ward, is what was going on. He was trying to make me look like, he was trying to push me to that point where I would have gone crazy. But I was stronger than that, and God built me that way. And, if you're asking questions here, I know he built you that way too, because otherwise you wouldn't be here. And I feel that so strongly right now, for whoever just asked that question, because I know that you're powerful, and I want to speak that into you and over you so that you can start shifting and start really looking at yourself differently, right? But it was really interesting that later on, this happened about probably 6-7 years ago. I got a phone call from a lady. We went to church together. She was part of the ministry worship team, right? And I worked with her, and I had actually written a musical, and she and another person, but we basically manned the ship and we directed it, and it was phenomenal. It was really fun to do together. And she ended up working with my ex-husband after it was several years later, and she was like being convinced that I had gone crazy and I was a horrible mom and I'd done all these things because she was believing the lie that he was telling her. Well, when she started doing really good in her job position and she was making more financially than my ex was, he became extremely jealous. So he started maneuvering and using these narcissistic tactics of poking and causing doubt and causing her to second guess and question herself. And, her confidence was dropping, and she actually did end up in a psych ward. And this was at work. And I'm like, and they went to, and she was actually, and then he this is, you're going to find this humorous. So when we were going through our divorce, he went and got a reverend certificate to make himself look better in court. He was all justified in himself because he had paid $500 to get a certificate. I'm like, well, honey, that doesn't make you holy. So it's interesting, that she was scared to call me. She was scared to talk to me. She was like, Anita, and I'm like, hey, I haven't talked to you in a long time. How are you? So I brought down the barrier of, for her, and I've actually helped her along the way be able to manage and rebuild her life and be able to stand in her power and really identify that, some of this stuff that's happened to us can be for us. I remember I was outside and I was picking weeds, and I bent over and I heard the Holy Spirit speaking to me, and he goes, everything that you've gone through has been training for what I'm bringing you to. And it totally shifted my perspective. It's like, oh my gosh, I've been in training. Okay, that would have been good to know at the start. But, really grabbing a different perspective of, if I hadn't gone through all those things, if I hadn't gone through all those struggles and been forced really to take a look at my life, take a look at myself, who do I get to be? Where do I get to go? What do I get to create? I wouldn't be here today. And I know that. I might be 6 feet under, who knows? But God had different plans for me, and he had a calling on my life. But going through certain things, it's like, I asked him, I said, so what is this for? And he said, I'm making you bulletproof. I'm making you bulletproof. And I'm like, cool. All right. I'm up for the challenge. Bring it on. I get to live my bold life, and I have my Bold Moves Academy, because it really does take bold moves to be the person who God's calling you to be, to walk into your calling, to answer the call in your life, and not hesitate and not be inhibited and limited as to who you can be. It's a process, right? It takes some planning. It takes strategy, and it takes a willingness to be able to be the person in training. Like when an athlete is training, this is so fascinating to me, because they will go through some of the most brutal training. And I did a study on mental toughness, like with the Navy SEALs and some of their other arms of the military. Marines are another one. They're just the mental toughness training that they go through. Do you realize that they're enrolling for this? They're willing to do the test to see if they can do it, just like an athlete, going through all of these practices, the injuries, the redevelopment, the shifting, hitting the next level up, being able to reach a little higher, stretch a little wider. And when we accept that challenge, when we say, you know what, I went through this for a reason. I don't know what it is yet, but maybe you do, maybe you don't. But if you're going through this with a willingness, it's like, okay, I have something to learn, not only about myself, about my potential, but we're all called independently to something. So we get to answer that call and develop ourselves in the process. And hopefully we become a blessing to everybody around us because of the dynamic changes that we can create for ourselves. It's so fun when you're willing to answer that call, and it's so inspiring to think that, oh my gosh, I've been chosen. That's pretty special and really cool.
I totally agree. And what I really want to say is thank you so much for sharing, because what I really heard when we were talking is the power really to being in your powerful self again. And what I want to ask you is, you've been in a really deep down road. You've been really close to suicide. You're not doing really well. And from the moment you said, I'm going to take my own power again, I'm going to step out of it. How was it for you to be in that victim mindset, to not feel powerful, to be in control of somebody else, to be manipulated, to make that shift, to be the powerhouse that you are now today?
Well, I know that my ex was trying to kill me. He had slashed brake hoses. He actually wanted me and the kids to be in that crash because it happened during the time that I had them. And so I was, I was just like, I was getting my fight back, right? It's like he was stimulating this part of me that was like, oh my gosh, you're coming after me. I mean, there's only one choice. Two choices. Either you give up, you give in, and you wonder, or you stand and you fight. Because if you think about it, are we really aligned in our society and the way that we think that, oh, we should have this life of ease and everything should be easy, and people keep saying this stuff, and it's like, yes, there comes a point when you let your mind relax to ease and allow things to be received. But I've never seen anybody live their life that didn't have some sort of fight. You know, when we're born, it's a struggle. When a seed goes in the soil and it busts through the shell, and then it has to work its way up to the top of the crust and break through the top of the crust of the dirt to be able to see sunlight and breathe. It's amazing when we think about, are we just running because we want to be safe and we want to be comfortable and we don't want to fight? Are we up for the fight? Is it really a fight, or is it just a challenge? Is it, you know, so these are the things that I thought about through this process, you know, without sometimes even really realizing what I was doing. I was doing things intermittently that made me feel strong. I when I was a sophomore in high school, my dad had sold my horse without telling me. I had him voice command trained. I had him so trained, and we were such close friends. It was such an amazing relationship where I could hop on his back. I actually used to lay on his back out in the pasture while he would graze, and we'd just spend time. It was just time, so much time together. And I could hop on his back, and I just point and I'd tap on his neck, and we'd go this way, go that way. And that fall, my dad had, I got off the school bus, and there was a horse trailer leaving the yard, and my heart just like grabbed in my chest, and I'm like, oh no. And so I ran up to the house, and I'm like, Mom, where's my horse? She just dropped her head. She didn't even know what to say to me, but she knew what he had done, and she knew how that hit. And so I made a vow to myself. I said, when I have the money and I have the means, I'm going to buy back what my dad stole from me. And so after my divorce, you know, I just made this decision that I was going to somehow, some way, I didn't know how, but I was going to get back what was stolen. And when I made that decision when I was a teenager, I think I was 14, 15 years old, that carried through when all of this blew up and all these things had happened and all this setup. You know, he had my family working against me. He had the neighbors working against me. He went to the church, and he, you know, it was defamation of character across the board. He lied. He made up stories. He fantasized. He did all these things, right? But it was like this piece inside of me that was still like, I deserved this. I knew this deep inside of myself. I knew that I deserved better. I knew that I deserved happiness. I knew that I deserved to have something that made me feel good. And the horses were medicine for me. They, you know, it might be different for you, or, you know, everybody has their thing, right? That they embrace, right? That is special. So when we were going through all these things in the house and the marriage, and it was just one thing after another. And, you know, God was a great advocate for me. I had many spiritual encounters. That's why I bring him up so much, because I'll never forget when I was wanting to go to a retreat in Hamilton, Montana. And I knew that, you know, here's a guy that, you know, is acting like he's holier than thou, right? And didn't want me to be close to God, didn't want me to go to this retreat. In fact, he said to me, if I was any closer to God, I'd be God myself. And I'm like, oh Lord, we're in trouble. But yeah, you know, hearing it's like you're going and getting this confidence and doing things against the grain, right? Doing the things that are best serving you, and being able to allow you to step forward. And you know that's in you. You know that you have this undeniable power inside of yourself that is pulling you forward. This calling, this piece inside of you that's saying, you know what? It's time to stand up. It's time to fight for yourself. Fight for your life. Because no one, if you won't fight for your life, who will? And that was a question that I asked myself later on in life. And I said, if I'm not going to fight for the things that I want, for the joy, for the peace, for the abundance, for the happiness, nobody's going to fight for me. If I don't speak out, nobody's going to hear my voice. They're not going to know what I want. They're not going to know what I need. They're not going to hear my intelligence or my brilliance, or they're not going to be able to relate to what I've gone through, to the things that I can offer as healing and help to somebody else. So it's a choice. And when you have been conditioned to go into isolation, conditioned to stop using your voice, conditioned to blow off the things that hurt and not own your feelings, to blow off the things that matter most to you, if you're not willing to fight for that, then you're giving up and you're quitting. The only time we get stuck is when we stop. So the question you get to ask yourself is, am I willing to stop? Am I willing to let go of the calling that I have on my life and the things that matter most to me? Maybe it's your kids. Maybe it's developing something new that you know that you've loved all your life. Like maybe it's playing guitar or learning how to surf or riding horse or, racing a car or climbing a mountain. Whatever that might be for you is the thing that you get to do for you. Because as we develop ourselves, as we start enlarging and expanding, right? We're expanding our territory. We're expanding the knowledge that we have about ourselves. We're expanding and learning about ourselves. It's just amazing. I've asked so many people, it's like, who are you? And you know what they answer commonly is what they do, the job that they have, the things that they've accomplished. But that's not you. It is, you're brilliant, you're kind, you're giving, you're talented. When you put an I am, that's who you are. That's who God made you to be. And that's who you get to be. And that's who you get to expand into and learn about. You don't know if you can climb a mountain until you climb it, right? And then when you figure out that, oh, I can do that. It's a lot easier to do something a little harder the next time because you've already done the hard thing. So now you can step up just one more step and you can put one more brick and you can put another brick and you can keep building and building your life into this beautiful creation that you choose. That was a long explanation.
Yeah, but it's what comes back to me is really learn to let go. I know it's hard, but learn to let go. Step into your power again. Start to live the life how you want to live, not what other people want to do, or your narcissistic ex or your narcissistic boyfriend or girlfriend or parent or whatever. You start to live from your power, the power that has been given to you, the power that's been always inside of you. And from there, you're going to start living on your term, because that's what I hear a lot from you when you were so deep inside this toxic well. You start to get out of it like little by little, but it's really taking those small steps and taking your power back. Yeah, and for sure you didn't, when you left, you were not changed right away. You were not talking the way you are today. So it took a lot of time. And I feel like the people are today want to have the quick fix. So when they leave a relationship, they think tomorrow or another day or a next month or year, it's all over. It doesn't work like that. And it's time. You need to start working on yourself, healing yourself. I've seen it with myself, with my ex-relationship. I'm not sure she was a narcissist, but I was I was always walking on eggshells. And whatever I did, whatever I do, it was always wrong. I my own decision, also what you mentioned with your ex-husband, when I wanted to go outside and buy something for myself, I heard her screaming, "No, don't buy it." And I
Yeah.
was just shocked. I was like, she's not even here physically, and still I hear her scream inside my head, and that's scared me. And I asked somebody, what can I do about it? And he said, what you can do is buy something for yourself, buy a small
Mhm.
gift, buy a small coffee for yourself. And once I started doing that, I learned that I can take my own power back. But it took me months and months and months for me to, my heart was fully closed off, but it took me months for me to really be kind to myself, really start to love myself and get a massage, buy something. And then the voice, it started to go away. And that's how I realized I can take my own power and I can really step into my power again. And it's not easy. It wasn't easy for you. It wasn't easy for other people. But what I've seen now when we're talking is it's hard, but you have to start moving on. You can still be in fight, in conflict with yourself and with the narcs, but eventually they will drown in their own selves, I feel, because you're moving on. You don't give any more power to them. And that's what I seen with the other guy that I was talking about. I stopped giving him power, and then it was just blossoming away. It was just gone. So for me, that's I talk in my own experience. I never been really in a hard toxic narcissistic relationship, so I cannot speak for that. But what I can speak for is getting your power back. Start to live from the heart. Start to take the small steps for yourself and start to let go. And that's hard. I know it's so difficult to to really let go. But as Anita explained, you really need to start take better care of yourself and really do what feels good for you and start the healing journey, right? That's really the most important. Really open yourself up and give yourself time to heal. I think that's the most important for us to, when we get out of an abuse or a toxic relationship, is to give ourselves time, right?
Yeah. I heard two things, letting go and giving yourself permission
Hmm.
as you were speaking, Vincent. And
Yeah.
those are two things I did not speak on, but you know, I did speak on the weight, and it's like if we're choosing to take responsibility for what someone else is doing to us, we're taking on an immense amount of weight, an immense amount of pressure because we can't fix them. And that's one thing that you asked me a question earlier of why you didn't leave earlier,
Hmm.
right? Why did you stay in it? Is because as as a person who's caring and giving and supportive, right? They might be doing it wrong. They're messing things up. And so what do? We go and we clean it up. And it's a cycle of they mess it up, we clean it up. They mess it up, we clean it up. Because we're taking responsibility for the mess that they're making. And we're being support and full supporter, which is one of the operating systems, right? Because most narcissists are like controlling promoters. They are, all animated and yet they're super controllers, right? So when we are not giving ourselves permission to leave, when we're not giving ourselves permission to do things for ourselves in the, like you were saying, in the form of self-care, just, have a little celebration. I went through part of my day. I'm going to give myself a coffee. I'm going to do something healthy. I'm going to enroll in the gym. I'm going to buy some new tennies. I'm going to do little things here and there that are going to make me feel like I have value. And the more that you can instill value in yourself and really realize how valuable you are, I mean, good grief. It's like I used to go through this thing where I didn't think I had any value. I didn't think I had anything to offer. In fact, when I got out of the that marriage, I didn't even think I was worthy of getting a job at McDonald's. I was like, whoa, I started to take a look at that. And then I started to land these really, good paying jobs. And I'm like, what was I thinking? Why was I thinking that? And it's all conditioning, so it's what you choose to believe. which is really ironic. I mean, we get to choose what we want to believe. And if all we want to believe is the negative, where's our cheerleader when we need it? It's like, yeah, sometimes we need to be our own cheerleader and push ourselves up and say, give it a shot. What do you got to lose? Most of the most successful people in this world have failed more than they've succeeded. It's because they were willing to step out. They were willing to try. They were willing to push their limits. Think about that. So if you're willing to step out and give yourself permission just to try things, and trust me, I tried a lot of things. I've done so many things in my life and was actually pretty good at most all of them. So I learned something about myself that I didn't know before and opened doors that I probably wouldn't have opened if I wouldn't have tried. There's no harm in giving yourself permission to try things and reward yourself and be willing to open yourself up to possibilities. One thing we didn't talk about either was about, trusting yourself. Trusting yourself that you're making the decisions. It might be temporary. I mean, you might do something, but I heard this, one of my high performance coaches, gave this test. He said, I want you to pick something you're going to do for 2 weeks. I want you to dedicate yourself that for 2 weeks. After 2 weeks of dedicating yourself, say it's exercise. We'll just use that as an example. And I know from my history of being a personal trainer, the first 2 weeks are the most brutal because when you get in the gym, after the first day, it's like you don't want to move because your muscles hurt. And then you go in and you're doing it again. You get past the first week and it's like, okay, I've made some ground. By the end of the 2 weeks, you decide whether or not you really want to be in it or not, whether you like it or not, because usually by 2 weeks, you've made so many advancements that now it's built your courage, it's built your confidence, it's built your awareness of what you can do, what you like, what you don't like, and be able to, either choose to continue or try something else. So it's really a great way to test yourself and give yourself permission to try. And getting
I feel that's. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
What I really feel is the permission.
Even with relationships, you could use that same thing. You don't have to get married, but you could be with somebody for 2 weeks and then you can step back. I have this checklist, of the behaviors of people, what to look for. How do you identify a narcissist? And when we go through this checklist, we go through it really close because there are some people that will come up and love bomb you and they treat you like you're the greatest, make you feel so good. Because a lot of times, you've been in isolation for a long time. You become hungry for love. You become hungry for acceptance, and you become sometimes a little desperate. So, really checking where you're at, what you need. Do you need this? Do you want this? Is this good for you? Is this something that is going to be an asset? Is it long-term, short-term? Are they, what are their intentions? Is it lust-based? Is it love-based? All those things are really identifying factors because the people that want to stick with you are going to stay with you and believe in you are the ones that you want to lean towards. But the ones that are just like for the fun, hey, let's see how this goes. There's even narcissists out there that are like, act like they're fully committed to the relationship, but they will not. They say, hey, this is just for funds. It's friends with benefits, blah, blah, blah. But they will never actually commit. But they'll play the part because they need your companionship. But they won't commit to the relationship. They won't commit to you as a person, as somebody who's got both feet all in and they're in it, for the long haul. So, I just wanted to touch on that a little bit because I know how it feels to be really lonely, be really alone, be isolated. And and sometimes set up that way to be really alone. But there are people out there, and there are support systems. I also have a mastermind group that I run where that's what it's for. It's for people to support each other. We can discuss these things. We can talk about, what we need right now. It's like I'm feeling like really insecure, or I just need someone to tell me, yes, I can, basically, or, give yourself permission, or tell me, give yourself permission, Anita, you can do this, you can go have that, you can choose for yourself. It's not selfish. It's not. So, it's just good to have support systems, because I know it's so easy to drift back into old ways of thinking. We have defaults, right? And we have triggers that put us, boom, right back into default. We make some progress and then we go right back. But having people that are pushing us up and giving us this higher thinking status, and really walking us into a level of personal high performance. If we're just wanting to live an average life, then that probably wouldn't be for you. But if you really want to find out who you are and what you can excel, that's exactly what it does. Having a support system, having higher thinking people in the same room. It's really actually a very special room to be in.
Yeah, but not just only that, it's also close friends and talk to them, because I when I was alone, I didn't talk. I didn't talk about my problems. I didn't talk the situation where I was in. I was always holding it to myself. And it was maybe shame. I didn't feel secure to talk about it. So I kept it to myself. And there was always moments that I was in these breaking points, that I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go. And I was coping with other things. So I turned into porn or to video games just to escape. And I realized I have to start talking more about the problems that I'm facing or the problems that I'm dealing with. And once I started doing that, I felt heard. I felt understood. I felt finally somebody that understands me. And I feel like that's really important with your message here today is talk about it. If it's a narcissist, you're not going to say to this narc, hey, you're a narcissist, because they're going to look at you like, what is burning? Because they don't know, they don't see it. But if you have people surrounding yourself and you can talk about it, you feel better, you feel heard, and also you can collaborate, you can brainstorm and talk about it. But what I realized with my own journey is I had to talk. I had to talk about my problems. And I see a lot of men out there, they're afraid to talk. They're afraid to talk that they are with a narcissist, or they don't know what a narcissist is. And they just keep holding it to themselves until they, like you or other people, they just say, it's enough. I cannot deal with this anymore. They don't see a way out. So for me, it's just, we have to learn to talk, especially for men. We have to learn to talk about our emotions, talk about how we feel. And yeah, that's really what we're as men lacking, really talk about what's going on in our lives. And I feel like if we start to do that more, open up from the heart and really share what's going on, it will help a lot of people, especially yourself, but it will also help others as well. With the conversation today, it will help other people understand what they're going through. But Anita, I really want to thank you so much for being here, and I want to slowly wrap it up because it's getting late for me. The question that I came up to me, I have two questions, but I have so many questions. But the question that really came to me, identifying a narcissist, and we haven't touched on that as well, between a narcissist and a hidden narcissist, and actually what a narcissist is, because people say, oh, it's a narcissist, but they don't really know in detail what a narcissist is. So I think it's also good to talk a little bit more about the narcissist dynamics. And also I talked with my friend about it, and he said the behaviors is always the same. It doesn't matter who it is, the behavior is always the same. He said it feels like they're on the same school, the narcissist school, and how they do the things and learn things there. It's crazy. And also the system where we live in, it's all narcissist-based living. So
Mhm.
I want to go more so people, when they leave this amazing interview that I'm having with you, to spot a narcissist and know how to deal with it, and they can avoid this issue, what other people are experiencing and what you've been through.
You know what I'd like to do is on the next time we get together is really start diving into because there's 9 different types of narcissists. So identifying them, there are different attributes, but there's actually a healthy narcissism. It's like
Really?
self-preservation. Yeah, like doing things for
Oh,
yourself, things like that, which is healthy, right? But it gets distorted, the higher up on the ladder that you go, where you get into your victim narcissist, the grandiose, the malignant or the psychopathic, you get up into the psychopathic, that's really dangerous. That's where women get raped. There's people, serial killers, people that just have no empathy. They do this for sport or entertainment, right? But, like the victim narcissist is probably one of the most lethal that, because they are such masters at manipulating things and flipping it around to make it like, well, if it wasn't for you, this would have never happened, you know, and comments like that, right? Where they're, oh, poor me. And they play the victim professionally. They're so good at it. The grandiose that walks in the room and has to be the center of attention and everything's great out in public. But when you get behind closed doors, it's a whole nother scenario. It's a whole nother world, which is really, and there can be a crossover between different, they can flip into one and into another, right? Where certain things will trigger them into a higher state of narcissism than what their norm is. When everything's going well, that doesn't seem like they're a narcissist. It's when they're triggered. And one thing I was going to mention that is really fascinating from my research is that, so they're insecure. So they project insecurity on you, right? They, they manipulate you they condition you into that frame of mind. But when you start going down the ladder of all the feelings and emotions and everything that come up of insecurity, of, not being worthy enough, of not, I don't think speaking out is an issue for most narcissists until they're triggered, right? Like the need to speak out, the need to override, the need to disregard, the need to have no consideration for when you're speaking out your truth. So it's like the opposite dynamic. It's like it's like this yin yang or this push pull. Like when they create a trigger over here for you, they'll lean in when they see they're getting results. And then when they feel like you're leaving them, then they'll pull back and then they'll go into, this love bombing or, oh, it'll be okay. And this distorted, and that's another reason why people stay in relationships like this is because you're thinking, oh my gosh, finally they heard me. Oh my gosh, finally they seen me. Oh my gosh, they finally laid off and I feel like I have some peace. So you're not in fight mode. You're not in, you don't feel like you have your guard up and you're shielding yourself anymore because they've relaxed. And as soon as you relax and something happens, then the cycle starts all over again, right? It just starts all over again. But this dynamic of how the emotional side, the trigger side, or in some cases, it's the same thing, but it's a 180 in the opposite direction on what the reaction or response is, what the outcome is totally different. For example, if you are triggered in your insecurity, what ends up happening is you shrink, right? You pull down. You trigger their insecurity and they're going to become aggressive. So that's the dynamic difference between a lot of those similarities and how, what the result is, what the outcome is and they're looking for someone who's the opposite of them. They're looking for someone who is sensitive, who is giving, right? Who is willing, who is supportive, who is available, who is there when they need them, who's convenient. And that's really what they're looking for, because this strong, intelligent, talented, dynamic side of you that they first fell in love with, that they first were attracted to or first targeted, is the magnet that drew them to you. And that's not the issue. It's what you do with it and what you learn to do with a narcissist, because you can shut them down and you can disarm them by your way of being, by the things that you say, how you form your words, how you hold your ground, how you, like if I was to turn to you, Vincent, go, Vincent, could you take care of this for me? I'm really busy right now. And you go, sure, I'll do that. So I just thought, oh, so he's willing to do things for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next time I come back to you, go, hey, Vincent, I know you did this other thing, but I really, really need you to do something. This is really hard. Could you help me with this? I know you're busy. And the more you start sacrificing the things that are important to you, the things that mean the most to you, and you're giving it away to them, the more they take. But the key is that they're not balancing it out. They're not giving back. They just keep coming and taking and keep coming and taking. And they get in your head to make you feel like now you're obligated because you did it once, you did it twice, a third time. And now, why aren't you doing that for me anymore, Vincent? Don't you love me anymore? Why, oh, you're neglecting me. Oh, I see how it is. Oh, so that's more important than I am. So you see how subtle it is? It's just,
Yeah.
It's how they maneuver. It's how they work into your emotions. They play off your emotions. It is an emotional entanglement, and it becomes a trap if you let it. It's learning the skill set to be able to stand your ground and say, you know what, I'm really busy right now. I can't do this. And own that and preserve your time. Your time is the one thing that you'll never get back, ever. The one commodity that is gone forever. So learning to protect that and protect, your boundaries. It doesn't mean that you can never help anybody. I would rather volunteer the help and say, I have this much time. I can do it during this time on this day for this length, this duration, right? And but this might be a one-time deal, and that'd be like a friend, or that'd be like a coworker, or or even a client. I've had clients that have taken advantage of me at times, and it's like oh, just I need to if you could just stay here for another 30 minutes, that would mean the world to me, and can manipulate, right? And it's so really it's learning your boundaries. It's learning to define where they are, what they mean, make your decisions stick, make the words that you're speaking with a period at the end and you mean it. Not like I've seen this with people that have dogs. It's like they did something really naughty and they'll be like, oh, don't do that, instead of stop. You see the difference? Because the dog doesn't understand anything but tones. So whatever tone you're giving, make sure that it's one that you mean and stand in it. It's like, nope. I said, no. And, I have a dog that is hilarious that way. He's such a good boy. And he does not like getting in trouble, so he's super easy. But if he does get in trouble and he hears my tone change, he's like, whoop, okay, she means business. I know what that tone means. And it's the same thing with people sometimes, is how we speak and really meaning what we're saying. It's not wishy-washy. It's like, it is what it is. This is it. And you get to decide what you're going to do with that then. And that's a whole nother skill set.
You know, Anita, thank you so much for sharing. And you know what really came up, and we discussed this before, was really when I was in a toxic relationship. The first thing was I was really love bombed. I was really, oh, you're such a nice guy, and she gave me everything. And I wasn't in much relationship. And later on, I learned also the traumas as well, the trauma bonding. But how she operated was crazy because then first was love bombing, and then I started some cracking. Her behavior started to change a little bit, but it was like this roller coaster. And I thought, oh, well, this is how a relationship is. But later on the road, she was really love bombing me, but then she was taking a little bit like snippets. And then
Mm-hmm.
she put ideas in my head. And then I
Mm-hmm.
started to, when we had a conversation, and she said, yeah, but you said this. No, I haven't. Yes, you did. You said this. And then I went back and then I just, did I really say that? No, no,
Yeah.
I told her, no, I said this. No, 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 you said something else. And then I just believed her. It's like, okay, I just, you're probably right. And I started to believe that. It was like later on, it was crazy how
Mm-hmm.
easily manipulate you and believe in something else that you didn't say. And from there, she started to the push pull mechanics. She also did that as well. Like, give me something, then pulling, and then give me something. And then it was just, then we had fights. And then she came back to me, and then we try again. And then it was always the same. It was never changing. And because I wasn't in a relationship, I didn't know any better. What you said in the beginning, you don't know what you don't know. And I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know what a toxic relationship is. But what I realized was it wasn't healthy. And she said, yeah, you're the love of my life and we're in a healthy relationship. No, we're not. She might believe it was, but for me, it wasn't. I was walking on eggshells. I was just like I mentioned, when I heard a scream in my head was, and I was alone. I didn't do, was so afraid to do something for myself or buy something for myself or take my own lead or do my own things. Or I was so small and I wasn't like that. I wasn't super confident, but I was good in my skin. And before I met her, I was really well, I was doing well, but after I was done with her, I was low. I wasn't confident. I was really small. I was not talking. I was really shy. And I'm like, no, no, I don't want to hurt anybody. And I want to be, no, no. And it was just, I lost myself completely. I didn't know who I was, what I wanted to do in life. I was just clueless. I lost myself completely. And it took me years and years because I really cared about her. And the thing that I want to touch on with the story is I believed I could change her. I fully believed if I can change her, if I give her so much love, she will change. She will see finally how much I care about her, how good I am as a man, how I've always been there for her, sacrificing everything for her, and it never changed. Never ever
Right.
changed. It was always this roller coaster, these battles, these fighting, these dramas. And then later on, I said, I couldn't take it anymore. I'm done. I need to get out. And other people that I spoke to, they said the same. I cannot deal with this anymore. This drama, this stress constantly. And sometimes I ask, where do they get all this energy to do all of this? It's insane that they are so powered by this drive to pull you down constantly. And every time I wanted to climb and go up, she was like, no, you stay here. No, no, I
Yep.
want to, no, you stay here. And it was so exhausting and it was crazy, Anita. Just from my own experience, I really believed it was love, but it wasn't. It was so toxic and I'm so glad that I'm out of it. And it, like you mentioned also, it taught me so much about myself, the traumas. It was trauma bonding, and I was attracting these women because of trauma. But it also taught me to take self care first. Boundaries. I couldn't set any boundaries. Now I'm learning to set boundaries. I'm taking the lead of myself. I'm taking the courage, the bold moves to do something for myself, really to be the man that I want to be, not what other women think I need to be, no, what I want to be. But it took me years, years and years and years. And for her, it was only 1 year that we've been together. And in 1 year, she just destroyed me completely. She just crumbled me. And I wasn't even like that in the beginning. And just thinking about it back, it's like they have so much power. And the love bombing was really hard because I really believed that she cared about me, but it was just a tactic to win me over. And once she had me, boom, she wanted to chain me forever and just, you're mine and nobody can have you but only me. And she wanted to claim me for herself. But then later on, I started to learn, really go put the mirror in front of myself and said, okay, it's okay. And forgiving her was really hard, but it was the best thing that I can do for me. And that's what I will say with everybody's listening to this. Forgiveness. It's hard, but if you forgive yourself and them, it will change your life. You will get freedom, you feel good. And that was for me the biggest change. Just say, I forgive you. It's okay. You don't know what you don't know. You've been through so much and you think this is the way how you need to control people, how you need to live your life. It's okay. I cannot blame for the things that happen to you. But what can I do is take in charge of my own life and get out of there and live the life how I want to live. And plus, I've learned a lot. I've gained new experiences that, like you mentioned, Anita, is it's the power that you have now. You can choose the people that you want to have in your life. And I feel like that's the journey that I had to been through, is going through these obstacles, going through these toxic relationships to become the man that I am today. Plus, I can have amazing conversations with you about it or with other people, but I can warn people about it because I've been there. You've been there. My friend has been there. We know what it's like, and it's a living hell. So that's why I wanted to have this podcast with you, Anita, and talk more about this because it's life sucking if they have you, right?
Yeah. Well, you're in the relationship with the intention to really truly love and really giving of yourself and pouring yourself into this person. And they get you into, when you're pouring into them, then they get you into, it's not good enough. You're not enough. You did this wrong. You're in the doing. And somewhere along the way, you forget that you're being, you forget who you're being, right? Because now
You lose yourself.
yeah, you lose yourself because they're like, this isn't good enough, that's not good enough, and they're taking as you're giving, and that's what you're focusing on. You are not focusing on yourself. You're self-sacrificing yourself. You're, not giving yourself any leeway, any forgiveness, because it's like, oh my gosh, I did this wrong and this wrong. They said that, and you're trying to please them, right? And that's where this, you think if you do more, if you could just do it a little better, just give them a little bit more, you'll make them happy. And it's like, no, this is entertainment for them. This is like, oh, I got a reaction. Cool. What will happen if I do this? I'll get another reaction. And it becomes hell. You're living hell while it's like putting somebody in the gladiator games. Do you think anybody that was put in the gladiator games wanted to be there? Absolutely not. They were enslaved and put in front of people and forced to do things. And it is so similar. You're playing a gladiator game with a narcissist, and unless you learn the skill sets of how to stand for yourself, how to make those boundaries defined, as well as your decisions, looking for, and not to be like hyper observant, because that tends to be an automatic, because you're always looking for a safe place, right? It's like I used to walk in a room and I'd see all these people and I would scan the room to find out where my safe spot was. And that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about understanding the behaviors so that you can identify, go, okay. So we get to test back to see if that's our beliefs are aligning with what we're seeing, right? And what we're experiencing, not so much our beliefs, but the acknowledgement of, okay, I see this, I identify this, let's test it. And let's see if this is, because a narcissist doesn't like to be challenged. They don't like confrontation, definitely don't like to be told, or made to feel like, they're wrong or they're being challenged. They don't like that at all. And they become highly triggered. And it's really easy to pull that out of them, actually, because you can tell if their ego is ruling the roost, right? Because most people are like, oh man, I didn't realize that, thanks for pointing that out. Whereas a narcissist is like, how dare you? It's like, you don't know anything, and come off with an aggressive, defensive type of attitude. So yeah, it's an interesting, very interesting arena to step into. And, the dynamics of these behaviors take a little time to absorb. It's like when you're mentioning it takes time after you've gotten out of a relation, it just takes time because you're not going to absorb everything all at once, and it's just like learning, right? The more repetitive we are with our learning, the more we hear it, the more we understand it. We're like, oh, okay. Now I see the big picture. Went over this a few times and now I understand, and being able to be relatable to make it meaningful, because we remember most the things that had the most meaning, right? I mean, we can recall things in our memory because it was a meaningful moment, whether it be positive or negative. It still had a meaning behind it, registered like it happened yesterday. So yeah, that's why talking about this stuff and going over it and creating the awareness and being able to identify it, just give examples and little stories that help you to go, yeah, I can totally relate with that. I see that.
Absolutely. And Anita, it's been really powerful. It's been really, really awesome. And I'm going to bring it slowly to a close. So, the one thing that I wanted to ask you is, what can the people do if they are in a situation like this, or with a narcissist, or with an hidden narcissist? What can they do? Because you mentioned it's really hard to get out. Eventually, if you cannot deal with it, there's no point in discussing with them. You cannot convince them, you cannot change their mind. The best way, what I feel, is to get out. So what advice can you give to the listeners that are in this situation or feel like something is off? What can they do to make the decision to learn about it and do something about it, or say it's enough, I'm going to go out? What would you advise them?
Well, I would say if you have nobody that you can talk to, go to a professional. I am an open channel for people that would love to get more information on this. Um, Being able to, connect with somebody that is, truly has your best interest in mind, and really someone who's not connected directly with your partner or the person that's doing with you, because it could be at work, it could be your boss, could be a coworker, could be somebody in your apartment building or in your neighborhood, or even in your church. Actually, in the church, there's a lot of this going on. We just push it down and act like it's not there and put on our mask, right? And but really being truly honest with yourself and seeking the help that you need. I would invite people, if they're interested, they can connect with me at mentor.more@outlook.com and just send me an email and we can connect that way. The other way is, we're online here and they connect with you as well and be able to ask some questions, and then we can reconnect and do it that way. But yeah, I just think, using your voice is such a powerful tool. It's so powerful. People need to know where your heart's at, where your head's at. And if you need help, thank God I had a mom that was probably the only person that really understood what was going on, because she went through it too. And she just didn't know how to help me, She, because she lived in it, for like 60 some years. But when I did finally reach out and go and get help, like I went to a rape and abuse center, I went to, different sources at the time locally. And, really that's the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing in teaching people about narcissism, because where do you go? Who do you talk to? And who is going to not look at you like you're crazy when you're trying to tell them what you just went through? It's like, and you went through that, why? And why'd you stay with that? It's like, you don't understand. It's just like people that go through domestic, which is also a form of narcissism, because that's more the grandiose and the psychopathic level. Domestic violence is totally aligned with narcissism, because they don't care. I remember this one gal, she was in an apartment building. She had called the authorities, the police department, and she said, my ex is trying to kill me. And they blew it off. And she was on the third story of an apartment building. He climbed up the balconies and he went in there and he killed her that night. And she was found the next morning because people weren't listening to her. They thought it was, cry wolf or false alarm, but if she's crying out and she's scared, it's like when I told the psychologist, when we did a psychological profile in our divorce process, I said, if the kids go with him, I will probably never see my children again. And he put in his report that I was cunning and underhanded and undermining the system and trying to instill fear when I was speaking directly from my heart. But people, in the justice system don't understand what this is. I know of one or two attorneys that have made this their mission in that field, so that when people come in, that they're properly handled. Judges aren't trained, police officers aren't trained, our communities aren't trained in this. And, and narcissists play victim, let's not forget. So, they'll turn it around and play like somebody was a narcissist in their life, right? But still, we can still speak through that and with intelligence and articulation and be able to get the message across of what this looks like and the steps that you can take to be able to step out of it powerfully and confidently without questioning, is somebody going to judge me, criticize me, shame me, put me in a category of, oh my gosh, they're just crying wolf, and really make it stick.
Thank you so much, Anita, for sharing. The thing that I want to say is what came to me when you explaining this is really learning to understand how a narcissist operates and really arm yourself how to deal with them. So if they say something, you know how to say something back. If they have the cold shoulder to you, you know what you need to do. For me, ignoring them works a lot. But if you're in co-parenting, I know it's hard because you want to communicate with them. You want to say your boundaries, but if they don't listen, it's difficult. But I feel like if you know what you need to do and what you need to say, it will make a big difference. So thank you so much for sharing. It was a really powerful episode. I really enjoyed it. I wish I could talk with you longer, but yeah, it's late for me. But the best part is we're gonna do another one in the near future, and we're gonna go more in depth. I want to learn more about the narcissism and everything that we need to know. And what you really said was really important was understanding and also listening. Because if somebody listened to this girl and took her in or just take care of her, she would still be alive. And you see that often when we just ignored, when somebody cries for help, you say, I don't trust him. They think you're just full of it or you're crazy, and the narcissist will manipulate other people to get advantage. Like you mentioned, they will say, she's crazy. I'm not doing anything. And then he sneaks into the house and kills somebody or do something else. So we need to pay more attention and be more aware that these things are dangerous, and can be really dangerous. So it's been absolutely powerful. I've been looking forward to having this conversation, Anita. It's been really, really powerful for me as well. I've learned a lot. For sure, the
Awesome.
listeners, they learn a lot from it. You gave a lot of value, a lot of your own journey, your own stories, and I feel like they will help people a lot because they will resonate and they feel like, okay, now it's time to do something. Now it's time to really do something about it and not just sit on your ass and take it and just hope that he or she will change. They will not change. The only person that will have to change is you, and then
That's
start
right.
from there and take your own power back and start to live from the heart and really do what's important to you. So before we go off, Anita, thank you so much. I have another question, but I will leave that for another episode. It's always what I ask my guests, but since we're gonna do another one, I want to keep it for myself for now. But Anita, thank you so much for your
Me.
amazing value, and I really enjoy it. So, is there something else you want to say before we're gonna go off? Share something feels on your heart that you really want to share with the listeners.
You know, I go back to knowing who you are. I go back to really, no one can take your power unless you let them. So it's learning the skill sets of how do I not only own my power, but really stand in it and hold my ground and be able to be the person unapologetically that God intended you to be and stand in that. You know, there's only one of you and there will never be another. Just let that sink in for a second. There will never be another you. And you might have heard this before, but I want to really, really speak over you that you're special. And there is a purpose that God wants you to accomplish here on this earth. And I believe my purpose, after going through all the things that I went through, and I probably wasn't listening, right? So part of it I take responsibility for, if not all of it. That if I would have been listening to the signs, if I would have been listening to the direction that he wanted me to go, maybe I wouldn't have went through that, and maybe I still would have. But the reason that I'm here today is to be able to strengthen and educate individuals like you who are really curious about how you can get your power back, how you can reclaim who you are, develop that, and be able to stand in that again unapologetically. There's no other way that you're going to reach your greatest potential unless you really know who you are.
Perfect. There's nothing to add. So, Anita, thank you so much. How can the listeners follow you? Because that would be really awesome. So they can reach out and ask questions or work with you if they want to.
Well, my Facebook page is, you can either reach me see me online as Anita Smith, or my business page is Meant for More. And then also you can also email me at menfor.more@outlook.com if you'd like more information, and we can get that out to you right away.
Awesome. So you also had a free gift, but I wasn't sure if you had finished it or still in development.
It's still in development. And yeah, the next time we get together, we kind of did this on short notice, but
Yeah.
the gift that I have for them is actually a 30-day challenge to
Mm,
start living the bold life.
cool. I'm gonna definitely be downloading that. So yeah, I will put everything in the show note once it's out. But like I said, we're gonna have another one in the near future, and we're gonna go more in depth. And probably I have more questions. And yeah, it's been
Awesome.
exciting. I've for me it's been really a big eye opening for me. Also, what I've the story it really still when you mentioned it to me, I still had like goosebumps. It was really oof, just what you've been through, and like I said to you last time, I'm really grateful, really, that you are here. Thank you so much for sharing. Also, you could also keep it to yourself or not speak up. So I want to say that thank you so much, Anita, for being here, helping us and sharing more insights about the narcissism, because people are just overlooking it. They just, well, it's a narcissist and what can he or she do? But the impact that people they can have on you is big. It's a tsunami on your life if you don't deal with it soon. So yeah, I'm so happy and grateful that you are here, share with us, and I'm looking forward in the next interview having with you, Anita.
Absolutely. You know, it's funny you said of sharing stories. In the back of my head, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, there are so many
Yeah.
more stories that I can share. Things that happen. So yeah, we'll just continue on in the next episode and share
Absolutely.
those. Yeah.
Anita,
Thank
again,
you
thank
as
you so much. Sorry?
Thank you. I said thank you as well, Vincent. I really appreciate you having me on your show. It's been an honor, really. And I really appreciate your vulnerability as well and sharing with the audience some of your own experiences. You know, just, men need to know that there are other men just like you, that have gone through what you've gone through. It's not just solistically with men, with women. A lot of people just, focus on the women, because women, it is common, but, there are statistics that have shown, as men have gone more recently into their feminine than in their masculine, that the amount of narcissists are leveling off with the men. So it's a 50-50 with between men and women that are actually narcissists. So this is ramping up. This is something we need to get. My mother had this phrase. She said, you take the bull by the horns and you tell it who's boss, right? And this is something we need to get control of, as far as really effectively getting um, the word out, getting awareness and what this really looks like. What is it? Why do people talk about narcissism like it's a passing word? It's like, no, let's stop, because this is a big deal. If I was to say bomb, you'd be, oh, or fire, you say, oh, narcissist gets to be in that category of a
Yeah.
showstopper name, that or title, because it's like the effects are devastating, absolutely devastating. I think next time in the next podcast, we should really talk about some of the health effects that
Sounds good.
from under high stress and everything, of what are the outcomes, because they are mind blowing. The manifestations of this are mind blowing.
Yeah, especially with your health and your mind. You're just losing yourself. You're out of control. You don't know what to think. You don't know who to trust. It's crazy. It's really challenging. And yeah, let's keep it for the next episode. It's gonna be more powerful. This one is absolutely powerful, but the other one is gonna be more powerful because I also have some questions, because we're gonna go deeper into the psychology and the mindset of the narcissist, but also the trauma. And I think that's really also a nice way to understand about that as well. So yeah, it's been amazing. I loved the interview. Thank you so much, Anita, again for your time, for your vulnerability, also for your insights, everything that you taught us today. I'm really grateful and I'm looking forward to having you on the show again.
I'm grateful as well. Thank you too, Vincent.
Absolutely. So, guys, I hope you enjoyed the episode. For me, it was really powerful. I've learned a lot, and this will help a lot of people. I know for sure. So, if you like the episode, if you like the show, like and subscribe to the How to Heart Show. If you need support, you can always reach out to me. You can reach out to Anita, and we are here for you. Because always remember, you're not alone. Because when I went to those things, to those episodes, or what you can call them, I thought I was alone. I was the only one that was dealing with this. I was the only person going through this. But then I realized I'm not alone. When I did my research, I started to reading other people's stories, and then I saw we are in the same situation. They are doing the exact same things as we did in our lives. So don't be scared. Don't feel shamed to reach out and ask for help. And I've said it in many episodes. It's powerful to ask for help. It's powerful to ask to see somebody that can help you, because it will move you to the next level. It will help you deal with the things that you're going through. And again, you're not alone. You're really powerful. You have something powerful inside of you, and don't let that go. Always stay true to yourself and love yourself unconditionally, and love your heart and live from the heart. So guys, again, thank you so much. And Anita, thank you. It was amazing. And I will talk to you soon. Take care.
Hey Lions, thank you for listening. Glad to have you on our journey to the authentic self. Want to learn more to embrace your potential? I invite you to keep listening. Do me a favor and smash the like and subscribe buttons, as this helps the show reach more listeners who need to hear these messages. See you next time.